Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and a little Path of Exile video. I say little because I'm going to try and make this as short as possible and to the point as I can, because as a new player to PoE, I've been lucky enough to have this community of people providing relevant advice to me as I've been doing this sort of series, and I've also watched a lot of guides, read a lot, and asked a lot of questions. And wow, the comical level of detail that's thrown at you, things you don't need to know for a genuine 100 hours, unironic hour-long beginner videos are the shorter versions I've seen. I've watched multiple 2 or even 3-hour videos on this topic, and while those videos are absolutely incredible, I did wish that someone would condense the most important things in a simpler way to take in easier. So basically, I'm making that video that I wish I'd found. I'm an actual brand new player is the thing, and I'll be telling you about the main things you need to know in a short, reasonable time frame. You know nothing about the endgame from the perspective of a beginner player for a beginner player. So I hope that's useful. Let's get started. So every guide that I checked when I was learning the game basically starts the same way, and I wanted to avoid doing that, but I feel like I've got to at least acknowledge it. When you create your character, you'll be given this option. What you want to do is pick the current one in the middle. That's the current season. Right now it's Season of Affliction. Standard's kind of like everything, but it's forever, which means the economy is really built up and it's really hard to get into. Whereas in the current season, the economy and everyone is sort of reset, putting everyone on more equal ground, and that'll make a big difference in the end game when you're looking to trade and get items. I wouldn't recommend you do hardcore or anything like that. Just do softcore, normal playthrough. In the middle here, you get all the new content as well, and you can ignore it if you want to. Initially, you'll have this selection of characters. You'll actually have 6, not 7, and that's because the Scion here is one that you unlock during the campaign. Ultimately, you can pick any class because every single class can use every single skill. Certain builds are going to work better because you're going to get ascendancies that lean into certain playstyles, but just pick what you like the look of. You can probably do anything you want to. When you load in, you'll wake up on this beach and you'll get a bunch of tutorials. You can choose to skip them or not. The information's a bit overwhelming. One thing you'll notice between my gameplay and yours is the fact that I have a different kind of UI for the item that's on the ground. This is because I have an item filter here active, and it's just the default never sync one. I strongly recommend you get an item filter, and to do that, all you need to do is go to the official Path of Exile website, and you can see that there's a game option here, and right down here we have item filters. This shows you the list, and the one at the very top is the most popular one, never sync one regular softcore. It's basically the default, least strenuous item filter. At the top right, you'll be able to press follow, and then it'll be put into your game the next time you open it. So just as before, you press escape, go to options, go to game, and then you'll find the item filter here. You press the drop down, there it is, never sync one regular hardcore, and now you have the item filter. Why is this so important? Because absolutely tons of items are going to drop, and 99% of them, even as a new player, are irrelevant to you. Also, there's going to be a lot of items that you will care about, and they're not really highlighted in an interesting way. As a new player, it basically is a cheat code to be like, hey, look, that's an interesting item, have a look at it. Or importantly, you might find a triple color, triple link, and I'll explain that later on. Basically, item filters make your life easier, and as a new player, you're absolutely going to want that. Alright, so to kick us off, you get given a weapon, and there's sort of a quest here where basically you get your first fight and it results in your first skill gem. This is basically how every damn guide I've watched starts, but I feel I also have to include it because it's pretty damn important. As you can see, I've got slots in my weapon and we have a green slot. So I take this skill gem, which you can see is a skill based on the description, and put it into a green slot. Now, as you can see, the skill has appeared on my bars, and that's how the game works. So as you can see, I have the burning arrow. I can right click the skill gem, take it out, the skill is gone. This is why every class can use every skill, because we can all get every skill gem and put it in if we want to, and that's pretty cool. Shortly after working your way up the beach, you'll encounter your first support gem. As you can see, I can hover over it and learn what it does. In this case, it's going to do a bunch of stuff that is useful for this ability we've just been given. You can see that this is a functional support skill because at the left here, we have supportable skills, and you can see that it's got burning arrow ticked. So this will work with burning arrow. To get a support skill working, then all I need to do is equip it into an item that is linked to the actual skill. They always give you like a starting thing that has a link that will work with all this in mind, so that you're guaranteed can at least start with something that works. But because these two are linked, now it's being supported, and now my burning arrow is slightly better, and I'm getting stacks of momentum as I'm using the ability. At the end of this sort of tutorial section, you'll meet this mini boss Hillock here, and what you can see is by circling around him, he cannot actually land a hit on me. This is something that I learned in my first sort of experience, is that you can also sort of cancel his attacks. Walking in, you bait the attack, you walk out, you hit. If you're a melee, this is an important thing. But ultimately, if in doubt, just circle around the enemy. As you can see, they kind of stun lock themselves with the animation. Much like you do, when I attack, I can't move at the same time. With Hillock's defeat, you'll get a level up and we'll get a bunch of items to work with. We can go to town and explain the rest. With this opening, I've actually been pretty lucky and I've got a bow here that's, yeah, yellow, but it's unidentified. Since it's unidentified, I can't actually equip it, so all we need to do is use these items that you're going to get a ton of scrolls of wisdom. You right click it and identify an item, and boom, now I see what's actually going on here. So I'll take that off, put this on, take the old gems out, and slot those back in. And this allows me to tell you about selling. There isn't actually proper currency in this game. There isn't like gold or something like that. You have consumables, much like Scroll of Wisdom is a consumable. So when I go to sell items, I don't get gold, I get things that lead to consumables. With enough scroll fragments, hey, I'll get some more Scroll of Wisdom. Or with transmutation shards, I'll get an orb of transmutation. For now, don't worry about any of this. Just sell any junk that you collect that you're not actively using. Just be aware that an unidentified item can often provide different resources in trade compared to identified ones. So this vine circlet here that's a yellow, unidentified, I'll get 5 transmutation shards, so it leads to orbs of transmutation. Whereas if I actually identify it, instead of that, I'm going to get 6 alteration shards that leads to an orb of alteration, something else. Generally, I sell blues, unidentified, and yellows, identified, as long as I've got the scrolls to do it. But now it's time to talk build plans and skill tree. When you get the level up, you'll get this pop-up, which you can press and have a look at the skill tree, which will overwhelm most players when they first look at it. It's always very impressive and very cool, but it's actually a lot simpler than it might appear because you have a starting point. In my case here, we're on the kind of dex side because that's the focus of this class. Whereas on my duelist, I started down here at the bottom middle, which is strength and dex. And you can see that represented here where we have a strength focused node and then a dex focused node. Whereas over on this class, it's much more dex focused in general because that's what the class needs. So if I go to the top and find a starting point here, you can see this is the intelligence side, and then on the left here we have, say, the strength side. So we all start at different points, but the nodes are often similar. Really, you're just in a section to begin with, and your starting options aren't that complicated. It's literally, do you want max life evasion rating or accuracy rating increased projectile damage? That's the only choice. Don't worry about everything else. However, I strongly recommend you follow a guide. There's loads of great websites where you can find, up-to-date relevant guides for the current season you're in at that. At first, I wasn't using a guide, trying to make my own sort of build with advice from the viewers, and then when I had to remake my character for the new season, I decided to follow one, and I found the experience just much more smoother and enjoyable, and I actually learned a lot by following the guide. There's so much to learn in this game already. You should make things easy for yourself. Just follow one, you'll have a better experience. Next, a really quick talk on quests. If you press U, you'll be able to see the map and the current areas you've unlocked. We've only been to these 2 areas. By pressing on these icons, it'll highlight things that are relevant to you from the quests. I only have one that I can highlight, but you can see Mercy Mission. It wants me to go here because it's lit it up. To find that then, I've got to go to the adjacent area that's connected, but you can see that I can continue on, and instead of going there, I could accidentally go somewhere else. To open the map while you're exploring, you can just press tab, and this helps you sort of move around, but it's still there at the top right. To navigate my way through here then, I know that it's kind of to the southeast, so I make my way to the east sort of south side of this map instead of walking my way north. If you're wondering whether you should be killing everything or running through as fast as you can, technically it is possible to ignore certain mobs and make your way to specific objectives, even ignore certain side quests. But my advice and what I did personally is just kind of kill the things that are in my way, batch killing packs and making my way to every quest. I didn't ignore anything because I don't know what I'm supposed to do. There's nothing wrong with doing all the quests, and it worked out fine for me. Once you find these waypoints though, you'll be able to teleport back to town and around easily. Though there is a cool trick where if you go back to character selection, then instantly go straight back in, it'll teleport you to the town of that region, and you won't even have to use a portal scroll. Now that I found that waypoint, I can click the waypoint here and click the waypoint I just found, and I'm back just like that. Through my exploring, I've found an exit, the mud flats, but it doesn't look like the right way. I'm supposed to be finding an island. So you can see on my minimap, I've got these kind of doors nearby showing me there's something near, so let's go check that out. There it is, the tidal island. Now I've swapped over to my duelist that I'm leveling right now for a quick word on what gear should you actually be taking. Most of the items I have here are yellows. Yellows have lots of these extra details, but blues also have a few, but obviously noticeable less. What really matters here is not necessarily the actual stats that are on it just yet, but especially in those early days, it's about the slots that you have and why. Personally, I need a lot of red and a couple green, so what I really need is slots for exactly that are linked. So if you have an item piece that has no slots or one slot, you're looking to get two and you're looking to get them linked, ideally with skills and colors that are relevant to you. If you're a dex character, it's probably a lot of greens, strength a lot of reds, and in a lot of blues. But as you can see, I have this ability here, Lacerate, and that's being supported by the Brutality support and also the Life Tap support. This is my main damage ability, and that's usually what a lot of builds sort of work and center around in this game. One main ability that you power as much as possible. So I'm currently trying to find a 4 link that has 1 green and 3 reds to continuously power up Lacerate. Once you're happy with the slots that you have, you can start to prioritize a couple extra things. Defensively, you're going to find things like armor and evasion rating, as well as energy shield. These are all just types of defensives. Armor reducing the physical damage, energy shield being a sort of barrier that blocks your normal health pool. See how I don't have any right now? And evasion rating just literally evading the damage. All of these are fine, you don't need to worry about them while leveling. What you care more about is element resistances, and just in general, maximum life on any gear you can find. So if it's got the right slots you're looking for, and it's got something like extra max life or extra defensives like armor, or any element resistances, that should be fine. You can check your character stats by pressing C and going to the defense tab. Here we have fire resistance, cold resistance, lightning resistance, and chaos resistance. Ideally, you want 75% in all of these, though don't worry about chaos resistance during leveling. You can see that I'm even over capped on fire resistance here, and that's because as you progress through the game, they give you these nasty negatives where they reduce your current resistances by say 30% or more. So as you progress through, you get more resistances, they'll knock that down, and you generally aim for 75% in all of them. In each town, you're going to find some sort of vendor that sells wands and magic items and even jewelry. Their second tab usually has where you buy new skill gems that you've unlocked, and you'll need to bounce around the vendors in the different acts because they all offer different stuff that you've unlocked in those acts. Just as before, you can see the supportable skill here, what it works on that I have. For example, Hex Touch support will only work for me on Lacerate and Leap Slam and none of the other things that I'm currently using. A cool trick you can use is to find items really quickly. For example, that Hex Touch I just looked at, let's type in Hex down here and you see that it'll highlight exactly that. This also works in your skill tree. You have a search bar at the top right. In the case of my bleed build, I might be interested in bleed things, so let's type in bleed, and there you go. Now it's highlighting relevant bleed things that I could look at and go, maybe I should work towards that. That could be useful for this build. Now it's time for the all-important currency talk, which I'm going to try to min-max as best I can. Basically, by collecting stuff and selling stuff, you get these things that turn into actual currency, like those orbs of transmutations. The most important one to find are chaos orbs, because that's generally what players use to trade with, and you want to stack those up for later. The ones I find myself using the most are things like orb of transmutation, taking a normal item to magic item, or chromatic orbs, which reforge the color of the sockets on an item. You know how I said that I need to find 1 green and then as many reds that are connected as possible to power up Lacerate even more? Well, if I found, say, an item that has lots of slots but they're the wrong color, I can take a chromatic orb and put it onto the item and change the colors of those sockets, maybe to something that's more useful to me. You can even use things like jeweler's orbs to increase or potentially decrease the amount of slots on an item. So by playing and selling things, you're going to get lots of these different things, and you use them how you see fit. Whenever you find a relevant item, you want to power up or change in some way based on what you need. You're probably going to want a lot of chromatic orbs though, so how do you get those? You're going to need a triple link color like the one I've just found. In the case of my item filter, you can see that it's highlighted for me so I don't miss it. What that is very simple. It's just 3 colors that are linked. So we have red, green, and blue, and they're all linked up. By taking that to any vendor and then just trying to sell it, you can see that for 1 triple linked item, I'm going to get 1 chromatic orb, and that's how you get them. So whenever you see a triple color, triple link, you want to take it so you can sell it for a chromatic orb and use those whenever you need to mess with the colors of your sockets. Next, a very short word on the Affliction League and how this plays into the leveling that you're doing. By going into basically any area when you're playing, you will very quickly encounter one of these sort of portals down to the Wildwood. By entering, you'll go into this dark area, and it's pretty simple. On my left here, we have these yellow colors, so let's walk towards them, see what happens, and they're going to generate me some of these currencies. If we read what this does, we've got the yellow and purple here, and then there's also the blue ones. The yellow here empowers enemies with vivid wisp, giving them damage reduction and increased speed, but they'll have more item quantity. So the more yellows I get, the more enemies are going to drop more items. Whereas the purple, they're going to increase the items that drop their rarity. These lead to what is known as loot explosions. So you collect as many of these wisps as you can to kind of, as the community calls it, juice up the enemies outside. You see, once I leave the wildwood, the wisp that I've collected will explode and spread out into the overworld, powering up enemies and making them quite dangerous, but also making them a lot more valuable to kill, juicing them up. By going down here, eventually you'll find NPCs that lead to the wildwood ascendancies, new skill trees that can be useful or maybe not, depending on what you need, and that's why following a guide is so good. It'll let you know what you might benefit and maybe whether you should hunt down your wildwood ascendancy and what to go for. At a certain point, by fighting through the level, eventually you'll be able to leave though, so we've got a portal to leave. All that juice has just gone out, and now we're going to encounter enemies that are buffed up. Next, a brief word on your hideout. During Act 2, you're actually going to unlock the hideout. It'll then be displayed at the bottom right from then on. You can click that at any waypoint to teleport to it. Here you start out with just a stash, which is very useful, and a crafting bench, which unlocks the crafting mechanic. It might be intimidating, but for us, we only care about a couple things. Can you increase the maximum life of an item, or can you get some element resistance? So let's type life in here, and looks like we can, though it will cost me a couple extra currencies. The starting ones are a lot cheaper. And let's start typing resistance, and you can see what I can get here, so we can get some fire, cold, and lightning resistance. In this case, when I press C and go to defense, you can see them lacking on lightning resistance right now. So let's put lightning in, and that's what we will put onto this piece, which is exactly, as you can see, what I've done. So as I slot that back on, hey, I've got more lightning resistance, close to that 75% that we're looking for. And that's all you really do crafting for during leveling. Get more max life and get more element resistance based on what you're lacking. It might be different for a weapon and what you're looking for there, but for your defensives, that's all I want you to worry about. The final topic for this beginner guide for all the acts and all that is the Aspirant's Plaza, aka your ascendancy. As you can see, I've unlocked my ascendancy and I've changed from a duelist to a gladiator, so it's given me this cool new circle of new skill trees. These are very powerful and generally lead into whatever playstyle you're working on. You'll have a choice of 3, and in my case I went gladiator because that leans into this lacerate bleed build playstyle that I'm currently working on. To unlock your ascendancy, you're going to need to reach Act 3, which in the town here at the top is the plaza you're looking to unlock. You're going to find these labyrinths within certain important sections of each act, and you're going to need to go find 6 of them and actually complete them to unlock the plaza and get your ascendancy going. And you do that by doing the early acts. It happens pretty quick. Every time that I stepped into an area where there was a labyrinth and a trial to go do, I was notified and found it pretty easily. Those labyrinths are pretty straightforward. It's pretty much just area traps that you move around and avoid. You can even leap and teleport straight through them or tank them. It's not that scary. There'll be a few mobs. Once you get to the end, you click the tablet and power that up, and do that until you've done all 6. Then we come to the hub here, go into the plaza and do the trial, which is pretty fun, involving a few boss fights, and at the end you'll be able to get your ascendancy unlocked, and we'll do that more in the future to get more points to spend on the ascendancy tree. But yeah, those are the main topics that I hopefully explained in a quick and reasonable way. I hope that makes you more confident about the experience. There is so much more I could talk about that I've already learned and discussed, and I know there's going to be a lot more that I'm going to learn in the future and could have included in this video. But this is meant to be just the minimal stuff that I think you're going to need to know to have a good time and kind of understand these main systems. If you guys have any extra tips for these true new players in the comments, or even me, then feel free to drop some. You might just help someone. But hopefully this was short and sweet and pretty much what you needed to know. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and I'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.